Welcome to Team More Wine, sir, the Game of Thrones guerrilla cast for Boomtron's Optionated. I'm Elena, with me is Rachel, and we're here today to talk about the latest episode. So crack open a bottle like we just did, and sit back and listen in while we ramble and curse our way through a dissection of the episode. So, episode 3, what was this one called again?
What was dead may never die.
Drowned God reference,
What? You got a little bit more of how the Greyjoys work and their philosophy and...
Yeah, I have very seriously mixed feelings for a lot of different reasons about them. I mean, first of all...
to me.
Yeah, first of all, I don't like the fact that they're, that however clever it is and however good a kind of battle strategy it is for reclaiming his throne, I don't like the fact that Balon's about to go running up Robb Stark's ass and fuck everything up in the north and possibly take Winterfell. That's not okay. But hey, to my point, Robb, stay in the fucking north. Should have listened.
It is a very, especially if you're looking at the map of Westeros, which if people are watching the show and they're not looking at the map, then they're really doing themselves a disservice, because you can really understand when they're talking about like taking the neck and holding Deep Wood Motte and all that stuff, how fucking easy it would be to cut people off, because the neck really is pretty narrow, but it's also really difficult because you've got the north above you and the Lannisters and the Riverlands and all that shit going on like right underneath the neck. Kind of a risky business that Balon is proposing.
Yeah, but if Robb's preoccupied, that land is rife for the taking.
Yeah.
My other problem is, well, generally, I guess I kind of hold to the Nietzschean principle that ultimately it is about might makes right, and if you're trying to claim something else, you're basically fooling yourself. I dig that, but at the same time, the whole idea of, we live on this shitty rock and we can't actually survive here.
They don't sow because they don't have any soil to sow in.
Right.
So they're like, oh, fuck it, then we won't.
We can't do anything except steal the fruits of other men's labor. That's kind of a slavish dick morality too, and I don't really get on board with it, so I'm conflicted, because on the one hand, I love the kind of the power of it and the honesty of it, but on the other hand, it's kind of a modus operandi that I just can't get behind. So
I think that's indicative of the Greyjoys in general. I mean, I'm a big Greyjoy fan, but mostly because they're the Westerosi trolls, right? Like they're just kind of like on their ships, like, I fought in your general direction, and just kind of fucking around. Because you're right, they can take things, sure, but then what do they do? Because they've got like 30 guys and some ships and no land. So really, sure, go ahead and take it, but have you thought beyond that? No, because as soon as you take something from someone, they're going to come and try to take it back. No fucking strategy.
And what happens even if they do win? Okay, so you're king in the north now. Well, at some point, somebody has to fucking sow. But if you have, like, whole conquered people that are now, like, part of your we do not sow philosophy, like, I'm sorry, but at some point it breaks down. Like, you can't have all chiefs and no Indians, so to speak.
Right, exactly. You're either going to be like, pillaging and raping your own people, or you're all going to be pillaging and raping, and therefore the Summerlands are going to come up and just be like, fucking stop.
Yeah, at some point the Ponzi scheme falls apart, and that's kind of what their philosophy seems like if it expands much beyond their little rock in the sea.
Although, can we talk about Theon's little scene where he's writing the letter, where he's like, dear Bob.
Let me use some sound effects here and flip to that page where how did I put it? Because I thought I was quite hilarious. I guess it's too much to hope he goes full Stark. Because I was just like, oh, Theon, that's so cute that you're actually taking the morality of the people who kind of raised you once your father gave you away, and maybe realizing
and he had
you don't have a place here, and your sisters usurped your power, and your dad hates you, and then he burns the letter and is like, I'm going to consecrate to the Drowned God. Oh, fail. I mean, not totally, because again, I guess the Greyjoys, they're so aptly named. Every joy that you have in them is kind of gray and it's conflicted because, hey, way to be loyal to your family. That's a giant ethos in this entire story, this entire land.
Except your family sucks.
But at the same time, your family sucks, and that's a dick move. Like, I think I wrote dick move about 4 different places in this episode. That was my theme.
Yeah, people are already, like, rewriting the letter, like, I heart you, love Theon, everything's going great, hugs, kisses from the Iron Islands. Like, it would have been better if he had just sent a fake letter, you know, because not sending one at all is kind of its own symbol.
I will say this, we don't know that he...
What happened to Theon?
We don't know that he didn't send a fake letter after he burned that.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but if that's a book insight, that's good, because here's the other thing. That kind of also shows that Theon's not really fully committing to the Greyjoy cause, because as you point out, not sending a letter kind of sends a message.
Yeah. And also, I have kind of a qualm with the scene where Asha says, "Oh, we're going to give you the sea bitch. We thought that would be perfect for you." I get it, haha, he's a bitch, but the sea bitch is Asha's ship, and I liked the fact that she had a ship called the Sea Bitch because it was once again her just sort of like thumbing her nose at the whole patriarchy. That now it's like, you're a little bitch, which isn't as funny.
I will say this about the Greyjoys. Their god was, I don't know what it is yet, but that's cool that they have their own. That's actually very Starkish, because the way Ned was always, going out to the Godwood and praying to the old gods that even Catelyn, didn't know about because she was raised with the Seven. That is, I think, a very northern thing, a very kind of hard men sort of thing.
Plus the Greyjoys are like, we don't need anything from you. We just need all your jewels and your food, but nothing else.
But nothing else. What have the Romans ever done for you?
Yeah, and your women and some of your boats, but, nothing else. We don't need shit from you, really. We got maybe your dirt.
Yeah, well, it's exactly like that scene where it's, what has anyone ever done for you, Greyjoys? Oh, well, they built your castle because you didn't have the men or the materials to do it, and they fed you, and they gave you women, and oh wow, they pretty much, your entire existence is actually built on other people doing things for you.
Yeah.
But we don't need you.
My boyfriend calls them wildlings with boats, because basically that's all that they are. They're wildlings with boats, which will make more sense when you start meeting more wildlings. I don't know. I really liked it though, and I wish that they would have gone a little bit more into the drowned god sort of religion. Maybe they will later on. Now,
hopefully. Yeah,
hopefully. They left out one of Theon's uncles. They call him Damp Hair. Because he's a priest. He's got a story. I don't want to ruin it in case they do bring him in for another season, so I'm not going to say much about him. But he has all these other uncles, and they're all just as wackadoo as his dad is. But this one uncle that is a priest. In order to become a priest, you have to drown yourself. And then come back to life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's their whole what is dead may never die thing, because I'm already dead, motherfucker. Like, this is just the afterlife, and it's awesome, and I'm a pirate. Kind of.
Honestly, that is a fascinating little insight into the religion, and I hope that they bring that up. But speaking of, that they haven't really addressed a lot of the gods or the mysticism yet. It's there. The characters are obviously aware of it. It's very important to some of them. We have Melisandre, who may or may not be a fraud, doing her thing, but otherwise it's just been small things or kind of lip service. It hasn't really been discussed, especially not in any depth. But then we have that scene with Bran and Maester at Winterfell, and they actually directly address the notion of magic, and he basically shits on it. It's like, well, whatever you're dreaming, it's obviously you're just dreaming, because you're a broken little legged boy who can't run anymore, and it means nothing, and magic is gone from the world. I appreciated that they finally addressed that, because it gives a different perspective to the characters that are like Cersei, who's completely dismissive of what Tyrion has to say about, you don't know what's north of the wall, and she's like, oh, you went to the wall and you came back believing in Grimulks and snarks, whatever she says. And the fact is, he thinks that maybe there's something to it, because he's not so he doesn't reject it out of hand.
He met the men that wrote the letters.
Exactly, that had seen it, that had died, in some cases died for it. And it does show, though, why everyone gets so wrapped up in this Game of Thrones, because they actually don't believe it. They agree with the Maester. They think that magic is dead, the dragons are gone, they're never coming back, and so all that matters, all that can possibly matter, are the concerns of men. So it's actually kind of a moment of great dramatic irony for the audience that we know better, and we're just waiting for that to become apparent to more of the characters.
Right, that, news travels. No, yeah, Master Luwin is pretty interesting. I can't remember if I'm 90% sure he is not a worshiper of the old gods. I think he's a 7-man. And yet he is the teacher and the caretaker now for this little boy that was raised to believe and to worship the old gods. So it's funny to me that he is trying at once to be like, oh, well, once the children of the forest existed, and once, and, on all these stories used to be real. All the stories that Old Nan told you are based in far history, but not anymore. And I know this because I tried it and it didn't work. So at least he's not being like Cersei and totally dismissing it as just kind of funny stories, because I think he has to honor his, the house that he serves,
right,
religion. I don't know. A lot of people are frustrated with Bran. They think he's not so interesting, but Bran is one of my top 2 favorite storylines to follow, because I'm, in high fantasy, it's a lot of lore, right? And for, Bran, it's most of the lore that you learn. So, do you want to go down to the Red Keep now? Because I thought the dinner scene was pretty incredible. One, it's hilarious that Sansa's sitting there eating dinner with Cersei and Myrcella and Tommen. She's just sitting there eating dinner like, whatever, I'm not a prisoner. I'm your guest. I'm just gonna have all the same food as you.
Okay, first of all, I was blown away because I was actually excited to see Sansa. Suddenly she's become one of my favorite characters to keep up with, and I really don't understand why, because I hated her so much.
That's how Sansa works. That's how she works.
But I kind of am fascinated by her and what's going to happen to her, and I was like, yay, Sansa! So I'm very happy to check in and see how she's doing. I don't know, to me, what does she do with her time that she doesn't have the time to teach Shae how to be a handmaid? Like, what the fuck is Sansa doing with her time?
We don't really know. I guess she hangs out with Myrcella a lot. She embroiders things. She
being the princess's yes woman.
Yes, she broods in her room quite a lot. Shae as Sansa's handmaiden is a fucking brilliant writing stroke that does not happen in the books. She's a handmaid. Shae is placed as a handmaiden to a very minor character that I guess they've written out. But as Sansa's handmaiden, it's hilarious because Sansa's just kind of so critical and kind of mean, and she takes her frustrations out on people below her. And Shae is such a terrible handmaid. Like, she doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. She also, I love her outfit. Like, that's her maid outfit. Like, what is that? I'm your maid. You kind of look like a prostitute. No, I'm your maid. Okay, well, don't let your boobs hang in the fire when you make it for me.
And yet Sansa is trapped either by her own meekness or her own conscience, because Shae is basically like, well, you tell me what to do, and kind of sassing her. And Sansa caves to that. She's like, oh, I can't stand up to anybody. Fine, brush my hair if that's the only thing you know how to do.
Well, I think what they're trying to do is emphasize how alone she feels, that she can't even be friends with the servants because she doesn't know who's reporting to Cersei, and she has no means of finding out like Tyrion does. Right. So instead, she sort of would rather be left alone. I mean, I think she feels like a prisoner, that maybe Shae is just, another guard. Hopefully next episode you'll see more of this, but, Joffrey's guards, they're pretty much up her ass all the time. She can't get anywhere without them.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if they emphasized that a little more, but I guess I didn't. I picked up on that just from Cersei's treatment of her at dinner, to go back to that, where Sansa is basically like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I don't know how to handle this. And so she was going to say nothing. But then Cersei's like, bitch, my daughter just spoke to you. You better respond.
And she's like, yes, I hope my brother dies too. No, that would be bad. And then poor Tommen, he's such a cute little boy. He's like, I wouldn't like that. Tommen, you're not a psychopath like your brother. Why can't you guys trade places?
Right? Well, and the girl Marcella, she may just be another Sansa. She's like, oh, what pretty dress I'm going to wear. La la la, while you marry the handsome prince. Isn't it romantic? Isn't it a fairy tale?
Yeah, she just wants there to be a party. She has no clue. But
Yeah,
but I think maybe that's supposed to be a comparison with Sansa. Like, that is Sansa, except now Sansa has had to look at her dad's head on a spike, and
Sansa's now finally getting the hard lessons of what can happen if shit goes wrong.
Right.
When keeping it real goes wrong, Sansa edition.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I cannot wait to see what happens with Shae as her handmaid. Like, I think that is just fucking brilliant because one, it sort of connects Sansa back to like Tyrion. So there's and there's always kind of drama going in over there, and then maybe Sansa will find out about Shae. Like, this is all new to me because it's not in the book. So it's exciting for me. It's like, how are they going to do it? What's going to happen? Like, are they going to throw some plot twists in there that don't exist in the book? So to keep us on our toes.
And even if it's just to keep Shae relevant as a character, I don't mind that either. Because I was kind of bored by her as Tyrion's mistress. Fine, whatever. But I'm actually right. But I'm actually kind of interested in her as a foil to Sansa, and possibly someone who could become Sansa's confidant, or, I mean, I don't know if she'll be able to extend her that trust, but I actually thought that Sansa noticed that Shae was not a local, she was not from there, which means that possibly she might be in the Lannisters' pay, but she's not somebody who was brought up with the Lannisters and therefore would be like loyal unto death to them.
Right, that's true. And she's also a reminder that there are other places in this world besides Westeros or King's Landing.
Right.
Because, she's got to get some fight back in her, even if it's just in her head, I really can't wait for her to be like, is that really your outfit? That's what you're going to clean my room in?
Yes. Well, can we talk about outfits and
Sure.
Talk about Marjorie? Is that how you say it, or is it Margaery?
It's Marjorie.
Marjorie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
you don't like her outfits? They're fucking insane.
Okay, she's Renly's slut queen. Yeah, no wonder he thought she wasn't a virgin if that's the shit she's parading herself around in, even while all the servants
that's so funny that they're like, oh yeah,
2 weeks and he hasn't fucked her yet,
Yeah, well, I think it's great that they're sort of being open with the fact that Marjorie is a very sexual being and that she's not some coy little like Sansa girl who's just like, oh, I love the king and I want to be with the king. Like, this is a woman with fucking cunning and a plan and some other motivation besides just serving her house. Because if she was just going to be serving her house, she wouldn't give a shit about having some sort of weird menage with her brother and making Renly really happy. Right. She wants that son, and she's gonna figure out how to do it. I don't know. I love Marjorie, and because she's, like I said, she's just one of those girls with a brain, and especially in the court intrigue part of the novels, that's such a relief. It's like you got Catelyn, who probably doesn't lie when she should, which is frustrating. And then you've got Sansa, who's just kind of cowering in the corner. So Marjorie is this...
And you have Cersei, who has no subtlety whatsoever.
She's got all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop. She just comes in and smashes things. She's like, I'm the queen!
I do want to come back to the whole Renly situation, but...
Sure. Let me finish. Her dresses are sort of like this weird postmodern take on, like Venetian wear. If you look at, like, the old... Renaissance paintings of Venice where the women's boobs are basically out. Like their nipples are like maybe covered. I feel like that's what they're kind of going for, that there is an example in like real history of women wearing ridiculous dresses to emphasize their sexuality. So it's not like she's like wearing like Alexander McQueen. Like, I know stuff is weird compared to what we've seen so far, but I feel like there's a logic, at least to the costume designer's brain.
Her dress didn't strike me as feeling foreign, I guess. It just seemed very sexual. And it fit, and the other women that we've seen, even those who married, aren't necessarily using their sexuality to advance what they're doing. Melisandre maybe, but she's doing it behind the scenes, not out publicly. So in a way, it's, I don't know, I guess Marjorie's the first woman who's blatant about the fact that she's like, I'm beautiful. I know I'm beautiful. I'm going to use that to get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's actually, that's a good point. I will say, with Renly, the first thing he says, that's a beautiful gown. I was like, Renly, do not talk about fashion. That is the last topic you want to bring up.
Poor Renly. I know. I feel really bad for him because he wants what he wants, and now he has all the. I mean, I don't really feel bad for him because he's the king. It's like, oh, boo, you have to have sex with a beautiful woman. But for him, he doesn't care. He just wants it to be Loras. And now, it was really sad for me when Loras said, your vassals are laughing at you. I was like, oh no, don't laugh at Renly.
Well,
Renly just loves you, Loras.
Here's the thing. Two things. First, if Renly just wanted to be Loras, why the fuck did he need to pretend to be a king to do that? And second, with the whole, I find it fascinating that the first moment, because I feel like this was the first moment Renly had where he realized, oh shit, being a king actually comes with responsibilities. It means that my life isn't necessarily my own. I can't just spend my days doing what I want to do.
Right, and then suddenly he's King Robert again.
Right, exactly. And suddenly he's confronted with this, I have to have sex with a person that I'm not physically attracted to, and in fact is the sibling of my lover, and that just makes, it raises the kinky to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Because I'm a king and I'm obligated to do that. Like, that was interesting to me that his moment of, oh shit, kings have other responsibilities was, I think, very different from his brothers.
Well, let me make you look at this from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. Do you really think that Renly was unable to have sex with Marjorie because he was disgusted by her because she's a woman, or because he didn't want to be disloyal to Loras? And then, if you think of it in that way, and you think about how much he's been hanging out with Loras, and he's been hanging out with all these people in Highgarden, you wonder how much of it was Renly's idea to be king.
That's an interesting perspective, because I would have assumed it was more he just literally looks at her and stays limp and flaccid, and he's not interested. And it's not necessarily that he's disgusted by it so much as he's just not turned on by it. And maybe that's, because I guess I was kind of going with her. She's like, well, get my brother in here. He'll get you started. Then you can close your eyes. I'll turn around.
I know. That was great. It's like, I'll just turn around. You can pretend I'm Loras. Which is funny because in the books, they basically look the same. Except she's a girl and he's a guy. It's kind of a funny little joke. Like,
but, yeah, because here it was, I mean, you tell me they're siblings, fine, I'll believe it. So I don't necessarily need TV siblings to look alike, but that's good to know that that's how it's supposed to be, that they're actually supposed to look like each other.
Yeah.
I will say, this was just one sibling issue too many. Like, obviously, Martin has sibling issues. Like, when he was growing up, did he have a lot of sex dreams about his brothers and sisters or something? Because seriously, like, we've got Jaime and Cersei, and then we've got the whole thing with Theon and Asha, and now we've got Marjorie and Loras, and I mean, at least the two of them, it makes sense that they basically know each other's lives inside and out, know all their secrets, and so that level of trust and that kind of, I guess, openness with each other is not necessarily meant to be kinky. It's simply the reality that they know each other's lives. But in the greater context, it's, what is it?
Weird.
Yeah, it's a little, he's obviously got a hang up there. What I remember about the book is, and I don't think they did address this, but it was just a plot point that got dropped very quickly in the show, was Renly trying to talk to Ned about how Loras has a sister who, here's her miniature, doesn't she look like Lyanna, and I don't know, I know that there was an idea
there was
that,
this weird plan to set her up with Robert.
Set her up with Robert and replace Cersei, and now it's, well, is it Robert and Lyanna as it's supposed to be, but I didn't really see much Stark in her face. I'm like, he was just projecting.
Well, I think that also brings it back to that point I made about the Tyrells being sort of crown hungry. Like, give my sister to the king. Oh, that king's gone. Okay, well, we can marry my sister to this guy and he'll be king.
Yeah, they are kind of crown whores. But by the way, Renly's crown was fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Like, I've not been impressed by too many of the crowns that I've seen so far. Let me take that back. Not so impressed by the crown Robert used to wear that Joffrey's now wearing.
Oh, yeah.
The golden crown that Targaryen retard got. That was pretty cool. In a bad way. But Renly's crown, I was like, man, it's a crown of antlers, and it's kingly and yet original. I like. But that's Renly again with the fashion. Of course he's going to have a great crown.
Yes, and remember in the books, they're always talking about how he spends a lot of money on his clothes.
Yeah.
He does. He spends a lot of money on his clothes, so. All right, let's move on. Let's move on from Renly. Let's go to Tyrion, because that's probably one of my favorite moments.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That was hilarious.
So he sets up the members of the small council because he's trying to figure out who's reporting to the queen, and he gives them all a different story, and it's just fucking funny because you know that Littlefinger's going to have an issue, and like, bam, and he's like, excuse me. Excuse me, Mr. Liar.
I feel like we kind of got Littlefinger's motto in this section, because he just looks at him and cocks his head. It's like, what's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
That is Littlefinger's life plan. What's in it for me?
And notice he's the only one that asked that.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyrion was like, "Oh, I'll give you Harrenhal," and he's like, "Harrenhal." Harrenhal is such a fucking joke. They're always like, "Oh, we'll give you Harrenhal." That's poor Harrenhal. It's cursed.
I actually was kind of assuming that had something to do with Caitlyn's family. Not correct?
Yes. No, it's a Riverland estate. It's huge.
Okay.
Kind of in the middle of it's like below the neck, but in the middle. So it like helps when you look at maps.
Yeah.
It's a huge, huge castle.
So it would be like a really prime real estate, but not necessarily make him Lord of the Riverlands.
Well, it could. It very well could if he could hold it, because it's one of those difficult to defend kind of castles. It takes a lot of men, and it's a very large estate. But yeah, it would definitely put him on par. Like he said, if they gave him the Riverlands, he would become one of the most powerful lords in the world. It's like, maybe you should question that. Why would Tyrion want you there?
And why would securing Lisa Arryn be that important? Because frankly, she's on a fucking mountainside.
And she's taken herself out of the war. Who gives a shit? Exactly.
She has, 40 knights in the Vale. Fine, they can protect the Vale. Who gives a fuck? Nobody wants the Vale. It's a piece of shit. And they have to hike all their supplies up the mountainside. Again, this is a point I made back when we were doing the read. If you want to fucking, deal with Lisa Arryn, you just put a fucking siege around the base of her mountain. Eventually, they're going to strip the mountainside bare, and then there's nothing left for them to eat, and they all fling themselves off the fucking moon door or surrender. Who cares?
Well, they also have a port. They have their own port, and it's also very, very difficult to march through the area that leads up to the Vale, because there's a canyon. So it could be done, but I think it would be really difficult it would take a lot of manpower to mess with the Vale, so it's kind of just easier to let it sit there.
Yeah, and to your point, so who cares whether she gets on board or not? It's not like she's sitting there, like, what's his face that Caitlyn had to promise two of her kids, like Rob, you'll marry one of the daughters, pick whatever one you want, and Arya will marry one of the sons. I forget that guy's name, but she had to go negotiate that because he held the neck, and he was like, yeah, I'm not going to let you cross, and he actually had that kind of power. Lisa Arryn in the fucking Vale in the middle of nowhere doesn't have that kind of power. Like, it's out in the middle of nowhere, and literally.
Well, I think he was appealing to Littlefinger's vanity, because you have to remember he's from an area over on that, called the Fingers, that's over there, and.
But I probably think it's more important than it really is, and.
Yeah, and he covets the Riverlands because he was a ward of Catelyn's father when he was growing up.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I understand why Littlefinger bit on the bait. I just don't quite understand why he didn't think through the logic and realize that what he was being offered was too big for what he would be giving into Tyrion's hands.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of stupid. It's much smarter to me to marry Myrcella off to Dorne, because it puts Highgarden in a vice.
Yeah.
Because Dorne is below that, and and so far we haven't really met them and we haven't really seen them, but they're rich and they have ships. They're known as, fighters and they're crafty. God, that would be such a good idea.
Well, see, with my limited knowledge of the larger cast, I still thought that was the only actually plausible plan. And maybe that's why I think Tyrion probably suspected it was Master Pycelle anyway, and that's why he fed him the most logical plan. But the Robert Arryn thing and the Theon Greyjoy.
Oh, Theon Greyjoy! I was like, why the hell would they give a shit about Pike? Like I said, they've got 15 ships and some dudes, and it would be really easy. Like, yes, like we shouldn't discount like naval power. It's important. But Pike has not been a threat. They were easily squashed in the first rebellion, in their first rebellion, and they would be easily squashed now. Yeah, and if you're trying to lure Theon away from Robb Stark's loyalty, well, his only value is being able to, it basically is being a spy and being able either to tell you what Robb's doing or feed Robb bad information. If he's fucking engaged to the little Princess Lannister over here, he's no longer going to be part of Robb's camp. He's no longer going to be in that situation where he could actually be valuable as an insider. Yeah, I mean, I could see it being valuable because they want to protect Lannisport. Be like, oh, we'll marry you to Myrcella. Please don't attack our stuff. Yeah, but he's basically like, you marry him to the third princess in the line, not the eldest princess. I don't think that they don't have another princess. Well, that's the point. What would be smart is to give him Sansa and Winterfell, because you can be like, hey, marry Sansa and we'll give you Winterfell and allow you to be king in the north. But that might not be something Cersei would go for. I think I've finally put my finger on the problem I have with Cersei, because I feel like I should like her more as a character, just by my own sort of ideas about morality and power and how it works. And I think my problem with her is that she's what Tyrion put it in the book, she's cunning, but she's not smart. And so sometimes she'll pull a move that's like, wow, that's actually really interesting and insightful. But I don't know that it's not that she's not intelligent, but she has no ability, I guess. She's not self-aware. And that's what this scene really hit home to me, when she is just ranting about how can you possibly send my daughter, she's only, 8 years old or whatever, she would be a hostage. And the subtext in the scene is the way Sansa Stark is a hostage. But yet Cersei has absolutely no problem doing that to someone else's daughter, to treating someone else's. But also think about what happened to Cersei herself. That's exactly what happened to Cersei. Yeah, and she was married off to a new upstart king to keep the peace and taken away from her family. Right, and I'm not saying that she shouldn't react, I guess, violently to that as a mother and as someone who's been in that position. But at the same time, what makes her, I guess, unsympathetic is that she seems incapable of projecting her own distress at that onto someone else. Like she treats Sansa like shit, and she can't seem to realize that, I don't know if it's that she doesn't realize or that she thinks I can't afford to realize and like shuts it down, because there was a moment at dinner where she swallows and it's very obvious, and that they probably told her to do that, where you're kind of thinking, wow, maybe she's actually sitting here remembering what it was like when she had to marry this king that she didn't know, and she was young, and then he smashed every dream she ever had. But then she goes on her little rampage, and it just... And then she doesn't really make it very easy for people to empathize or to pity her. Like, right. She's got this whole, like, the only people who are people are me and Jaime and my kids, and no one else is a person. Exactly. And you know what? I understand that people like that exist, and that's fine. And I'm not saying she's not a realistic character, but I would like her so much better, and I would probably be rooting for her if she were just slightly more self-aware and slightly more sympathetic. And I'm kind of disappointed that she's not, because I would love to have, I don't know, to have a woman who is in a position of power and invested in it, and who does the intrigues and who is like that catty and that bitchy, because my God, that woman is a bitch. But if she did it in the right way, she would be fun. Yeah, she'd be a great character to love. But as it is, she's like a character that you kind of love to hate instead. And
I don't know. I think I'd rather love her. I wish I could.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Cersei's always been very difficult. Like sometimes I can still look at Catelyn, like her moment when she goes to treat with Renly, and she's like, "My son is off actually fighting a war instead of playing at one," and it's like,
Yeah.
burn, Catelyn, burn.
Yes, or the comment about, these are the nights of summer, but winter is coming. You're like, oh, I got
You're like,
chills.
oh, it's like, man, this girl's ruining our party. Like,
Yeah.
Speaking of that scene, we got to meet one of the new characters who I was
Yes.
very excited about. What did you think of Brienne?
I thought it was hilarious that Loras got his ass handed to him, and then to find out it's by a woman. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I guess what do you do if you're a woman who's 7 feet tall in Westeros? You become a knight, and in a way she's I don't know if she's necessarily a further progression or if she's a different progression of Asha Greyjoy.
Well, she's Asha if Asha had like honor and like if she grew up on the story, right? Because Asha didn't grow up on the stories that Sansa did. But let's pretend Sansa is 7 feet tall and she grew up on those stories and she had a loving family and something to aspire to besides like pillaging.
Right.
So she becomes this, virtuous knight. Plus, comparatively, Brianna's not as attractive as Asha. Therefore, she doesn't really have a lot going for her. She's not Marjorie. She's not going to be like, I'm going to get what I want with my body. At least not sexually. She's going to have to hit you over the head and take it.
Right. Yeah, she can get it physically, but not sexually.
Mm-hmm. I think that Brienne is great because she is going to be a look into the world of like knighthood, but she's going to be the one that's honorable. You would think that, she would be the one that had a hard time because she's a woman, but I feel like she's going to have she's like so honorable and so great, and everyone else is such a dick to her. Brienne's one of my favorites.
Well, I mean, that makes sense to me, just because generally if you are going against a stereotype, if you're any kind of minority, whether, you want to talk like racial or gender or simply philosophical, if you're in a minority trying to make your way into the kind of solid block that is the other, you kind of have to outperform on every level.
Oh yeah, she's definitely outperforming. I mean, she takes the crap out of it.
Right. So, she has to be both a better knight, physically, but also live up more to the chivalric ideals. But obviously she would have to embody those even more so than any of the male knights who were kind of accepted as a knight because of their family or because they had the training or because they fought in the right war for the right side. Exactly. Whereas she actually has to prove herself on every single level and be not just adequate, but I guess the kind of shining example of what it's supposed to be.
Right. And now she's a member of the Kingsguard.
And I love Renly for doing that. I think it's hilarious that Loras is like such a little pussy that he's like, oh, Renly, she beat me.
She beat me.
Possibly give her a position of honor. And you're like, dude, be able to take a beating like a man and say, fuck, I'm the best knight in the land. I won the King's Tourney twice in a row. And I just got beat by somebody. She's a fucking badass. My hat's off to her.
She's
my true love. God damn, what's your problem?
Well, you know what else is really great? Brienne is going to be, it's great that she's in the Kingsguard because you have to understand that the way that the Kingsguard work is it's a lifelong vow, right? You can't take a wife, or in Brienne's case, a husband. So she's also sort of saving herself. She's taking control of her own future, and one of the only ways that she knows how, she's avoiding the same situation that Myrcella and Sansa and these people, aren't able to avoid, because they become pawns for their fathers to marry off. And now you can't do that with Brienne because she's part of the Kingsguard.
That's as you say, it's a very clever way to say, I don't want to play that game. I don't want to play by that rule. So how can I get myself out of that situation?
Right. I mean, because can you imagine a girl who's like as athletic and used to being a knight and doing what she wants, and then her father marries her off to some rich dude, and then she's got to like wear dresses and sew. She would die in that, right? That's not what she's been. That's not what she is. So now at least she's made it so that legally, even no one can take that away from her.
I mean, I can't even imagine that for Arya, and that's understanding that Arya is still a kid, and that sometimes tomboys do grow up to be girly girls.
But you think about if Arya had, like, met Brienne right now, like...
Oh my god, she'd be
like... obsessed with her.
Yes, this hero worship, this, you are everything that I want to be.
Yeah.
I'm going to be exactly like you when I grow up.
Exactly. She would totally love her. But yeah, I was really excited when Brienne knocked him over. I was like, yes, Brienne of Tarth! I was like high-fiving my boyfriend. I was like, yeah! Like, really excited. We're still camping at Craster's. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh god. That was just, why was Jon Snow surprised? This is maybe something that I love and hate about Jon Snow. Hate in the sense that I'm such a kind of cynic and realist, and
what did you think they were going?
Exactly. I can't take it seriously when, like, reality slaps his dick in somebody's face and they're surprised. But at the same time, I love Jon Snow for being still kind of naive and kind of, you know,
there are
he's
no
shocked
sons. Did you know what he's doing with his sons? It's like, yeah, Jon.
Yes.
We all knew. We all knew. You're the only one who didn't know.
You're the only one who didn't figure it out, but guess what? It's more valuable for us to be able to stop here. He's saved lives, including your uncle, who we're out trying to find right now, you know, so we let him be crazy and do his crazy shit and kill his sons, and we are okay with that.
Yeah.
But the fact that John's, like, shocked and horrified by that makes him lovable, but
again, because he went through that same thing when he first got to the wall, right? And he saw his brothers, and he was shocked and horrified. So it's like, once again, he's shocked and horrified. So at least we know that Jon still holds out some sort of hope, like that what he's doing is like this honorable, great thing, and then he realizes again and again that it's not.
Yeah. But I don't know. Jon Snow's an optimist. That's beautiful.
Like, it's really funny that he's an optimist because he's not really. Like, he's always just very mournful and kind of mopey, but he really is the optimist.
That's the thing. Well, he in the way he presents himself, but in his heart, and you get this in his chapters, his perspectives, like he secretly hopes that maybe his mother was that lady in the tower that supposedly Ned Stark fell in love with when he was off campaigning, and not some scullery maid or a whore on the trail. He's like, he secretly hopes for that. And you're like,
yeah, like, I'm not really a bastard.
I am a bastard.
A family.
But I'm a noble bastard, not a peasant bastard. It's different. Yeah.
I must be a noble bastard. I can swing my sword so much better than the peasant. When Sam gives that little thimble to Gilly. You watch. By the end of this season, everybody's favorite character is gonna be Sam, because that's what happens. You put a Sam in like a fantasy novel, and he's the best.
I concur. Fat Sam, who just wants to have a wife and a happy life at home, and like have his dogs and his farmland.
And he wants to read a little.
And someone and he reads, and he, you know, puts his feet up by the fire and smokes a pipe. Yeah. Sam's like the everyman.
It's really funny because you know how he's obviously like Samwise Gamgee, right? Like naming the fat sidekick Sam. That's just like, okay, we get it. He's Samwise Gamgee. But also that whole thing where he's like, oh, I wanted to be a wizard when I was little, and it's like, oh my god, he wanted to go to Hogwarts. It's like Sam is us. Sam is like,
who's the token fat kid at Hogwarts? I can't remember, but like that's Sam. Yes.
He's Neville Longbottom.
He is. But you know what? I'm just waiting for that awkward moment when Neville Longbottom becomes the hottest to happen here.
So you're predicting that Sam is going to become the hot one?
I'm not predicting it, but if it happens, I'm gonna laugh and toast it, because that would be awesome.
Awkward moment when Sam becomes the hot brother.
Oh God, yes.
Well, I feel like Gilly might be thinking that. She might be like, "Hey, God, he gave me a thimble."
Or maybe Gilly is simply more practical, and I want the kind one, the one who's going to understand. And it's not that Jon Snow is not a sympathetic character, but I don't know.
She also is like the bastard incest daughter of some crazy wildling.
Well, not even that, but I don't know that Jon Snow is necessarily a kind person. Like, he's sympathetic to us as the readers, because I think he often expresses our point of view, but in his actions toward other people, he's not always nice.
Well, he's not a gentle person, but I don't think I would say that he isn't kind. Well, come on, he went out into the woods to look at what was happening to the babies. Why would he do that?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
He's just not a gentle person. That's not how He wasn't given the tools. He wasn't like Sam. He didn't have a mother to hold him and pet his head and read him stories.
Yeah, instead he had bitch ass Caitlin like giving him the skank eye every time he asked for Pat and be like, "Fuck you! You're the reminder that my husband was unfaithful. I hate you."
You realize that every single character in Westeros has some sort of parental issue? That like everything revolves around the fact that someone doesn't have a mother or doesn't have a father or doesn't have a mother and a father, or their mother likes their brother better, or any of that. That's how all of it boils down to parental issues.
Apparently the theme song of Westeros is that Corn Limp Biscuit, family, it's all a family song, because your father fucked your mother fucked your brother, your father's not your mother's dad, your brother's now your lover. I don't know, but that's the fucking theme song of Westeros.
Yes, it is. It makes me want to like go in and sit in on like a therapy session with George Martin. It's like, dude.
Right? So the one thing I don't think we've talked about yet is the end of the episode with Arya and
Gendry.
And Gendry and the badass alert that was Yoren finally kicking ass and like taking names.
Having a Boromir ending. Totally
exactly.
Boromir.
Like, I know he's not going to survive these odds, but my God, look at this man go. It's like circle slash.
And he was so honorable. He never gave them up. He knew he was going to die. He said run. He died for them. And like
that literally was the Boromir ending.
Yeah. It was the Boromir ending.
It was fucking amazing. Yoren.
But the best part is that they got captured at the end anyway.
Yeah, well, that's because it's George Martin, and he's like, wears his little stilettos, and he's sticking through your heart.
They are highly condensing sort of a long and winding story in which Arya and Gendry and Hot Pie and Lamy Greenhands sort of escape and then hide in the woods for a while and then are captured again, but not by gold cloaks. They're actually captured by, or do you remember the Hound and his marauding band, and Ned sent the people out after him when Robert was hunting, and they were like, they came and they killed our women and they burned down our crops.
Yeah, not the Hound, but the Hound's brother.
I'm sorry, the Mountain.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so he has this band of sort of outlaws, and they are the ones that capture. So I think that they're sort of going to condense all of that into one big group, because it wasn't Gold Cloaks that... Anyway, it's not that important. I think it was done really well. They did a really great job of sort of cutting out all the crap and kind of being like, okay, see, these are the pertinent things that happen, and then they get captured. So I'm totally fine with it. But there are some pretty amazing characters that I hope they keep, just because they're also despicable. Mm-hmm. So we shall see.
Well, are you talking about the 3 in the cage that Arya let out?
Them and several others.
Well, these are despicable characters.
They're extremely.
I was looking at that, and I couldn't tell in my notes, but like, was that genius or retarded? Because that she let them out. And I'm like, on the one hand, maybe it's, enables them to escape if those guys go fight or something, or maybe it just means there's 3 maniacs on the loose and kill them in their sleep. That would be the kind of irony that this story uses.
I mean, it's a fact. We do have 3 maniacs loose at this point, right?
Well, 2 maniacs and 1 guy who we don't know why he was at the wall. Maybe a gentleman, may not be a gentleman.
Okay, but we're talking about a dude that was in a cage with 2 scary, scary maniacs, and he was fine.
Yeah, he was preternaturally calm there. He's kind of like, I think we've just met. Have we met the Hannibal Lecter of Westeros?
Nothing shit. Let's just say that Jaqen H'ghar is a very interesting man not to be trifled with. And he has 2-toned hair. Did you notice that it was better in this episode than the last? Like the last episode, he kind of just had dirty hair, and then this time in the firelight, you could see that one side was kind of gray and one side was kind of red.
Oh. No, I didn't notice that.
So one side of his hair is red and one side of his hair is white.
Oh, okay. Well, can we talk about other things I didn't notice? This is a callback to episode number 1.
Okay.
And this is something that one of my coworkers pointed out, because I was talking about how I don't think Melisandre, how I'm undecided on Melisandre and whether she's magical, because I haven't seen her do any magic yet.
Besides not die when she drank poison. Which you stubbornly are very like, that was not magic.
I'm not not saying it necessarily wasn't. I'm just saying there are plausible alternatives
Yes.
that Occam's razor tells me are more likely than that she's magical. But he was like, okay, so let me show you this. And he like pulls up this YouTube clip of that episode, and it has her necklace start like flaring with light.
Mm-hmm.
And he was all, yeah, so my wife was like, oh, that's just ambient light. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I watched that. I'm like, no, that's not. That's not what the lamps are doing. That's obviously like something making her little blood red necklace burn.
That could totally be an invention. She trapped a firefly in a jewel, and then she went and got the iocane powder. And
I'm not that much of a disbeliever. I'm an apatheist, not necessarily dedicate one way or the other. I'm totally willing to believe she is magical, and that's actually something that you can't explain another way because, hey, they don't have electricity.
Yeah.
That's not a battery. Like, so in that sense, I'm like, okay, maybe that makes me a little more inclined to heed Rachel's hints and say maybe she is, okay? Fine. Maybe Melisandre had some fucking magic because her neck was closed, and y'all, I can't explain that.
No, I'm good, because I think that there are other things happening. Like, for example, like we have dragons, right? Clearly magical item, right? That a dragon is a magical thing, right?
Yes.
Even though it's an animal and it eats and it poops and it flies and it doesn't really do anything magical, its existence is magical.
Yeah, and the fact that those eggs were dormant until Dany threw them in the fire is magical. The fact that she could, like, walk into that bonfire and just come out, with ashes on her and dragons on her boobies and not dead is magical.
We have impervious to fire, okay?
Yes.
We also have zombies. I mean, magical, right?
Animated corpses, zombies, whatever. It seems it's at least supernatural enough that it can be magical. We can file it as magical.
Okay, we'll file that around. We have a lady with glittery necklace who may or may not be using iocane immunity to survive poisonings.
Right.
We have little boy who may or may not be able to see through the eyes and or occupy the bodies of animals. What else do we have?
That may be it.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, I feel like that there are subtler bits of magic that you will not recognize as being magic until much later. So we'll just leave it at that.
I'm willing to agree with that because one thing I have been told about this series as a whole is that there is a lot of, I guess, foreshadowing, or it's not necessarily foreshadowing, but there's a lot built in that you don't recognize on your first read, but then when you hit that point, you kind of just reevaluate. It's like click, 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 click. Everything just sort of shifts how you see what came before.
Right.
So I'm totally open to the fact that there's shit going on right in front of my face that I haven't recognized yet. That wraps us up for this episode. Thanks for listening. Come back next week, and always remember to ask, more wine, sir?